from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I'm very pleased. Joining me, Lori Crooks. She's the CEO of Cadra. Lori, thank you very much for being here with me today. I really appreciate, as a CEO, how much busy it can be. And, you gave me the time to chat today. The way, as I was explaining to you before we started the recording, I like my guests to introduce themselves. Tell us a little more about you, your journey, what brought you to be, the CEO of Cadra. And, just I give kind of a teaser to the audience. We're going to talk about compliance a lot today. And this is, I think, a topic which will benefit both if you are like in a startup and trying to do, your work, being ready to go and sell to enterprise and maybe government customers, or maybe if you are a veteran and, maybe you get like some other insights from Lori. So Lori, again, thank you very much for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it. So a little bit about myself and my organization. So Cadra, like you mentioned, we do cybersecurity compliance. We help a lot of our customers get ready for their third-party audits, whether it be SOC 2, FedRAMP, GovRAMP, NIST, PCI, ISO. We help with the full gambit, helping with policy and procedure development, stuff like that. So growing up, I definitely did not want to be in cybersecurity. That's not what I had planned as a child. I thought I was going to be a doctor and work in sort of the medical field. But when I got to college, I decided I didn't like biology and chemistry and all those things. So I bounced around for a while and ended up with accounting. So I actually ended up with an accounting degree and started out working for the government right after I graduated college and went to the state of Georgia for accounting. So started there and then kind of morphed into cybersecurity from there. So it's been an interesting journey for sure.
Yeah, but I'm sure now you think like it's as stressful as being.
Yes.
Yeah, I always do this joke with people who are in the cybersecurity. Like I was working as a technology consultant at some stage. I talked to a lot of CISOs and, chief compliance officer, and I say, wow, these guys are champions. So it's like a really tough job. Now, looking back, at this transition, I'm sure, Lori, like you had to do some shifts in the way you think, and especially when we talk about compliance. Of course, we're going to go into the compliance in details, but just as a journey from, shifting gears and, coming to something which is not easy, everyone knows. So what is the biggest mindset shift that you thought or you felt that you need to do?
Yeah, I think it's really just making sure that you're staying up to date with everything. Thankfully, I am one of those people that like to learn. So that works out great in this industry because as everybody knows in cybersecurity, it changes from day to day, month to month. When I started out doing cybersecurity, it was physical infrastructure, and we would have to go to data centers and actually audit the servers and make sure things were plugged in correctly, all that kind of fun stuff. And then from there, shift to the cloud. And now we have AI. And with AI, that's kind of going back a little bit to data centers because it's got to power AI. So it's very interesting in cybersecurity and compliance and just trying to learn how to stay on top of things. And the mindset is just being open and being open to learning new things and being open to new challenges, honestly.
Cool. Now let's go, into the, the real business, what you do, right? What I like always, and to simplify things, because I was explaining to you, Lori, before, I have like different audiences. So some people, they might be familiar with, what compliance means and what standards means. But let's start a little bit from basics.
Sure.
Because if, I know like some companies, they maybe heard, like for example, especially if you are in the US and you want to, have like some contracts with the government, you need to have something called FedRAMP. Like if you are working with, the healthcare, institutions, you need to have the HIPAA, which is, for the Health Protection Act. And by the way, again, it's not like only in the US. In Europe, we have the GDPR. We have a bunch of other like regulations. Even, in some parts of the world, they started to adopt this because it's important. Now, let's start with this. Why having, these compliance frameworks is important in the first place? And what do you think companies usually misunderstand when they want to start?
Yeah, it's great. The frameworks really are a set of rules, maybe a set of regulations, depending on which one you are, for the organization to follow to make sure that the data is being protected safely. So as you mentioned, if you have healthcare data, you need to follow one set of standards to make sure you're compliant with HIPAA, FedRAMP, something different. But it's really about protecting the data at the end of the day. So if somebody's starting out with an organization, or it's a small organization and you're not sure whether you need to be compliant or not, you really need to just kind of look at the data and types of data that you have within the organization and what you're gathering from customers or processing for customers, and see if there are regulations and compliance standards around that. From a challenging standpoint, I feel like a lot of people just might not understand, especially when it comes to some of the governmental standards, everything that needs to go into it. They think it might be something that is very easy to get a FedRAMP or a GovRAMP or something like that, but it's really not. It takes a lot of time and effort, and it takes a lot of resources from your team, from other teams, not just financial resources, but people resources as well.
Right. Now, you've worked with wide range of these standards, and I'm sure like each one of these, they would have, their own challenges, but what do you think is the most challenging, vertical that needs to follow? Like which one of these would be like, having the most number of certifications and audits that you need to go through to get that certifications? Like any specific vertical you can mention?
I think right now I would say the FedRAMP. So anyone working with the government, and that has a product in the cloud and wants to sell to agency, I think that right now is the hardest vertical, only because you have to have a federal agency to sponsor your product. And that's where a lot of people kind of struggle, is they might have all the controls in place, but they might not be able to find an agency to sponsor them right now. It's great. FedRAMP's going through a lot of changes right now, so that might change. We'll find out, soon, because they're about to put an announcement out very soon. But yeah, I would say FedRAMP, and FedRAMP is very specific too about what things have to be in place, how long passwords have to be, how long you have to, do inactive accounts. So they have a lot of very specific parameters that you have to follow, versus some of the other standards are a little bit more open.
Now, the question, Lori, that also, because I discussed this with some founders sometimes who are especially, in the SaaS space, and they think that following, or let's say getting, these certificates is like one-time job and then we're done. So from an expert, and let's hear it from you, how the journey begins, and how much time and effort these organizations would need to keep putting, so they keep their certifications valid, they make sure that they're still on the standards. And you just mentioned, like you said, like FedRAMP would have kind of a update, and maybe we know like the other ones, the ISOs, the SOCs, the plenty of these,
Yes.
Always they change. So me, as someone who have the responsibility of first ensuring that when I go talk to customers that your data is safe, it's kept private and all this, where do I start, and what's my journey looks like? And especially I'm asking you this, Lori, to take us on this journey from maybe customers you onboard, how that onboarding looks like, and then what they should expect after they get the audits done.
Sure. So it's not a short journey, as I mentioned, even for some of the smaller organizations. I'd say it's If you're onboarding with us, we would take time to kind of go through the organization as a whole. Like I said, it really focuses on the type of data that you have. And then we would talk about the type of compliance standards that you would have to be compliant with based on the data that you have. And then from there, we would help you prepare. We have a lot of partners who are audit firms, CPAs for SOC, 3PAOs for FedRAMP. We have, QSA partners as well. So depending on the type of compliance framework that the organization needs, we would pull in one of our partners to actually be the audit. But at Cadra, we would help you kind of work through the controls that have to be in place, making sure that they are in place. If they're not, we'd help with remediation and implementation. We would help with the documentation and policies and procedures that are required by every framework, and just make sure that they're covered there. And then we would be that liaison between your organization and the auditor to make sure that your organization is answering everything correctly, we're uploading the proper evidence for the auditor, et cetera. And then from there really is continuous monitoring. It's making sure the controls are staying in place. It's making sure policies and procedures are staying updated. And unfortunately, everything has to be done on an annual basis. So the next year, the auditors will come back out again. But usually the second, third, fourth year, et cetera, is a little bit easier because you've already had those controls put in place. And as long as they're still operating effectively and efficiently, then you should be okay for the following audit. It's just a matter of making sure that they're in place throughout the year.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, one aspect also which some companies, they might have confusion on it, is the third-party risk, right? So, and as someone who kind of touched this domain a few years ago, but I would like to hear it from your side, Lori. So, do you think that organization, they underestimate, or maybe sometimes even they don't see these risks that comes from the third party risk aspects? Let it be maybe supply chain, let it be, I don't know, maybe other vendors they work with. So I want you to highlight this because I think also this is an underrated risk aspect which can first, I would say, affect the cybersecurity hygiene of a company, and then it might affect also the compliance. So tell us a little bit more about this, why it's important, and to do it in early stages is before it goes out of control.
Yeah, definitely. Third-party risk is definitely something that is, I consider high risk, especially if those vendors have access to your data or your network. For example, the target reach was because of a third-party vendor who had access to something that they weren't supposed to. So third-party risk is definitely important, and making sure that somebody is going out there and verifying that the vendors have proper access, making sure, again, kind of going back to continuous monitoring, making sure there's some sort of background check performed on them or non-disclosure confidentiality agreements, making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing is also key. I recently had a small business who relied on a MSSP to, make sure their laptops were encrypted, antivirus was installed and all that. And when we came in to help them prepare for an audit, we found out that the MSSP was not doing their job. So nothing was encrypted, antivirus wasn't turned on. It was quite a mess because that small business didn't know that they actually had to go out there and kind of verify that the vendor was supposed to be doing what they were supposed to be doing. One of the things with third-party management too is asking maybe if the vendor has like a SOC 2 or some sort of standard that they go and perform on their side. You can review that and look through, see if they have any deficiencies, stuff like that. But it's becoming such a risk that in the latest version of NIST 853 Rev 5, they actually added a whole control family around supply chain risk management. So organizations, at least that are applying NIST 853, actually have to check their supply chain and check their vendors on a regular basis to make sure that there are no issues.
Lori, you just gave an example of small businesses, and part of what I try to do in the show is talk about small businesses, startups also as well. So whose responsibility is that? So probably, at the beginning, maybe they don't have someone who's responsible for cybersecurity, like an enterprise would have a CISO. So you mentioned like they maybe have a MSSP, which is managed security service provider, or maybe they are dealing with a virtual CISO, kind of someone who give them the guidelines. What they should focus on when they deal with their security providers if they don't have that in-house from compliance perspective, like what are the main things you think that they should, as a business owner, because let's say imagine I have a small business, maybe I have a startup, maybe we have like maybe less than 10 employees, so I don't have really a CISO, I don't have maybe even an IT manager, but I'm dealing with someone who's taking care of that. So what are like the main things I should ask my provider, whether it's a virtual CISO, MSSP, to take care of when I want to deal with them?
Yeah, great question. And one thing I want to take a step back to is we tell people to list all their vendors and then list them by the risk as well, especially for small organizations. If you're using a vendor that doesn't have access to anything, then you might not need to go out there and kind of do your due diligence as frequently versus an MSSP or virtual CISO who have access to a lot of stuff. You might want to obviously check them a lot more. But we usually have our small organizations go out or bring somebody in like myself who can do like security questionnaires, send out, see what that organization has in place. As I mentioned earlier, you can gather any SOC reports or anything that the organization might already have themselves. And then sometimes it's just phone calls and kind of gathering data as needed. Again, with a small organization, I know time is limited. So it's a matter of trying to maximize the questions, the type of questions, to make sure that the vendor is doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that's where we kind of bring in that security questionnaire and send those out and rate things by risk on the security questionnaire as well.
Great. This is by the way a good also practice, so people can learn, like maybe if they are not living in the US, they don't have access to you, Lori, so it's good to have this knowledge. Now, speaking of knowledge, speaking of part of the things we see a lot is every company, small or big, every vertical, over the years they have been told to build kind of security training programs, so basically to tell people who work at the company, about the basic things and to know how to deal. So you've built also comprehensive training programs. As I was preparing, I went over the profile. One of the questions that always kept asked is, like we did the training, right? So we did kind of assessments and all the other stuff. How we make sure that this stick with employees, right? So it's not like something we do today and maybe after 2-3 months, we hear like there's an attack, and the reason is because that employee, he or she, they didn't remember how they should act. For example, when they see, I don't know, maybe a phishing link, or maybe I don't know, they clicked or they took a call and they were like really tricked by the bad actors. So how we can make sure that any training program we do really stick for as long as possible? I know it's hard. But from your experience.
Yeah, definitely. Great question. And we really like to address this because unfortunately, employees really are the biggest risk, whether it's intentional or unintentional. If they're not paying attention to security training, or they're just not, unfortunately remembering or thinking, they might be able to divulge information that they're not supposed to. So that's where these comprehensive security training programs really come into play. Usually for these, we like to hit it at a few different angles, a few different ways. So we will do your basic security awareness training usually upon hire, and then annually. And then on top of that, we'll maybe do like monthly bulletins. A lot of organizations now have started monthly phishing campaigns where they're actually going out there and testing the employees to see whether they are clicking on the phishing link or not. And if they are clicking on the phishing link, then they know that employee needs to go through additional training. Also posters, I know it's a little bit different with everybody virtual, but maybe like banners, again, just reminders in different ways to be able to have the employees remember, don't click on links that you're not supposed to, don't share your passwords, just basic training like that. And then every October is actually Security Awareness Month. which I think this podcast is coming out probably sometime around October-ish. So we like to do a lot of different things around that month as well, making sure that, again, there's, town halls, maybe going through security stuff, sending out various emails. Any of the security training programs can also be gamified right now. And then we also have some organizations that will send, just like quick 30-second, 1 minute, like training videos that look more like kind of a cartoon, again, just as a reminder. So I think a comprehensive security awareness training program is really layered with a bunch of different things to catch everyone's attention and keep it top of mind.
Great. Another thing which I'm curious to know your opinion about, Lori, and it's an old debate. Like the more we have these policies, the more we have these, let's call it paperwork, and sometimes like extra effort. People tend to complain, and then they start to say, "Oh, like this is affecting my productivity. I don't want to change my password every I don't know how long, right?" So, and sometimes even. I very rarely have seen it, but I've heard about even some situations where someone took it personally. Oh, you don't trust me, right? Why are you asking me this? So, what have you seen working, in making sure that taking care of the compliance, taking care of having the right security measures doesn't slow us down and doesn't affect on the company culture overall, I would say?
Great question. And I think some of it too just depends on the company culture. We find organizations that take security awareness and compliance seriously from the top down to the bottom usually have less people who are complaining about things because they understand how important it is within the organization, especially if the CEOs and the CTOs and stuff are promoting it throughout the organization and they understand how important. Usually if it's not top down, it's a little bit harder. But yeah, usually when organizations have those types of issues where people are complaining on a regular basis, we kind of take a step back and see if there is anything alternative that we can put into place. You mentioned passwords. Well, NIST recently came out within the last couple of years, basically saying that you could change your password policy where as long as you have a passphrase, which is a long password, like "I love my dog!" ! Where it's a certain amount of characters, you actually don't have to change it as much. And so it's a matter of kind of reviewing what people are complaining about and seeing if there are alternatives in the space where you can still meet the control, but maybe do it from a different way. And we call that a compensating control in the compliance world.
A great perspective, I would say. Lori, of course, I think since I started the podcast and my luck that I started almost the same time where ChatGPT came. So it was kind of an imperative for me to ask about AI. But, joke aside, how have you seen the role, not only AI has been there for a long time with us, I know. But I mean, the new generation of the AI, like ChatGPT and other tools, generative AI and automation, because I know I always stress it's not only AI, it's always AI and automation. How have you seen this easing, I would say, compliance, audits, or is it something we need to still wait to see how it's gonna shape over the time? Have you seen any change since these tools came out?
A little bit. I've seen some of the GRC tools try to start implementing AI on their side where it's helping gather evidence or kind of reviewing evidence from a kind of high level to make sure that it is meeting the control. And I've also seen it kind of help with some of the policy procedure development as well. I always caution people that if you're using AI right now, even though it's spitting great information out, you still have to have somebody go review it to make sure that it's accurate. Just from an example that I've used, I try to create a policy based on this 853 once, and it did a good job, but also it had wrong controls in place and wrong headings for some of the controls. So it's not always 100% accurate. So you might be able to use it to gain efficiencies, but just make sure that you're checking to make sure that what it's providing back is accurate.
Lori, another thing which I'm not sure if you started to see now, we started to see AI acts and regulation for the AI. Do you think we are ready, or we gonna still wait for some time before because these regulations are the technology itself is still emerging. So do you think we are really ready to have a standard? Like, for example, again, I'm getting the excuse from my from my audience because I'm going a little bit technical today. Let's say for banks, everyone, I think even any normal person have seen the PCI DSS before, like the word, which is the compliance for banks or any financial institution, which is basically you need to keep the data secure, safe, it's not tampered. Same thing for HIPAA for the healthcare and so on. Now with AI, and of course, like these standards and regulations evolve over time, and kind of they are like not changing every, let's say, couple of months. They change every couple of years. Now AI itself is changing so fast. So do you think we are ready to really put these regulations and frameworks now, or at the time being we still stick with whatever vertical we are in and we make sure that the AI is compliant with these regulations? How are you seeing AI regulation space going?
Yeah, interesting. There are actually a couple new AI frameworks out there that I've seen a couple of my organizations starting to implement. ISO has one, 42001, and then NIST has an AI cybersecurity framework as well. And so I've seen organizations kind of do their regular PCI, HIPAA, NIST, and then pair it with one of those ISO or NIST standards for AI, especially the larger organizations, because they know their employees are using it, but they want to make sure it's somewhat regulated, especially from a security and compliance standpoint. You don't want your employees putting sensitive information to AI because you don't know where it's going on the back end of it, unless they're using like enterprise version or something where you're not using that data for training. So we definitely prefer people to pair it with one of the AI frameworks if they can. And then, like you said, PCI, HIPAA, I think they're going to eventually catch up, but they're just not there yet because it does take a while to kind of get those updates, go through the drafts and get them published from start to finish to get a new version out.
Yeah, funny enough, before I come to record this episode with you, Lori, like I was talking to a friend and we were just discussing the same thing because he was talking to some founders, AI founders, of course, they are very excited. The thing that, came to discussion is about data that can be leaked. Let's say I would not call it legitimate, but coming out of ignorance. So maybe I would go, we are not a public company, and I go, for example, as a financial analyst within the company and say, hey, like last quarter we did this, and we are projecting that, and then I put it in a ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and of course, like a DLP, which is like data loss prevention, data leak prevention systems, usually they would be able to detect it if you are like getting a file outside of the organization, you're trying to access like something. But this, I'm sitting at home, right? I'm not on the company network, and I go open ChatGPT, which no one can tell me no, you're not allowed to, and I put these things, and this is where we're seeing kind of I would call it unclearness, if the term is correct, or like a little bit kind of people are lost. Like, what should we do? And this is maybe back to the training and all the things. So, do you think also this part should be part of the trainings that we give to employees? That hey, don't put sensitive data in your LLM, right?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it's really important right now to update those trainings to make sure AI is, included. Like you said, there has to be some sort of safe use for it. Don't put company financials in, don't put company sensitive information in, because again, we don't know where is going on the back end and where it might turn back up, because a lot of this is being used for training purposes, and it might end up somewhere that it's not supposed to be.
Great. Now, I'm going to shift gears a little bit, Lori, and ask you about your entrepreneurial journey. And you are a solo founder, which I know from myself, it's not easy.
No.
But to your if now when you go and look back since you started it, what do you think the biggest surprise that you figured out and you didn't know about it before, really being an entrepreneur, and especially and let's be honest about it, in a male-dominated field like cybersecurity?
Yeah, there's a lot I can say on that.
Please.
But yeah, I would say I've been in the industry probably about 8 years now. Well, not the industry. I've been in the industry 20 years, but I've owned Cadra for 8 years now. So I've learned so much about myself through the process as well. Like I always knew I didn't want to report to somebody. I'm not somebody who likes to be micromanaged. Like I knew after a couple of bosses, I'm like, I'm done. I'm out. I need to do this myself. But it's not just doing the work, it's learning. You have to learn sales. I am spending a lot of time with somebody now learning how to maximize the efficiency on my CRM. I have to do the marketing. I have to do the networking. It's so many hats as a solopreneur. And I have a small team with me, but it still always lands on me right now. So it's been a learning journey. I've grown, like I said, personally a lot. And it takes a lot for me to put myself out there, especially in a room full of males, to be like, hey, I'm here. I own my own organization as well. Let me help you, and bring those kind of people in to help me, or bring in those where I can help them on an organization side or a client side.
I'm not sure also, Lori, if maybe, I'm sure you faced it. I'm not sure if you still face it till today, especially in technology in general. And when you go and wear your advisory / consultancy hat, and people, they ask you, okay, like, how big is your company? Okay, I'm a solo founder. Versus, without mentioning the names, but people would guess. And that, I can actually mention, like the big fours, they have, right, like some practices for cybersecurity. So did you feel at some stage, oh, like it's a challenge, I would not be able like to compete there? Or actually you find your own niche, right? And then you said, okay, let me focus on this. I will build, my base there, and then I can go and target like bigger customers. If you can share this, and the
Sure.
shift of the mindset, because I believe this would be so inspiring for fellow solopreneurs and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, definitely. I would say both. I definitely am intimidated by the big four, but I also know there's no way I'm going to compete with them right now. So I actually feel like I found my niche with some of the FedRAMP documentation. I was finding that people didn't know how to write those system security plans for FedRAMP. They didn't understand how the controls had to be implemented for FedRAMP. So I kind of found a little niche there where I was working directly for a lot of DoD customers, or contractors, and those SaaS companies that were selling to the federal agencies, kind of writing and doing that documentation and helping them get ready. And they were able to work with me versus a larger company because, price, but also because we are smaller. So we are nimble, we're quicker, we can kind of get this stuff out, and we have the time to spend with the client as quickly as they usually need it. It's been a learning journey though, kind of with that niche, especially going back to AI, we're finding not as many people need those documentation services. So now I'm having to figure out, okay, where can I pivot my organization and use AI either as a tool or find another little niche where I can compete, with some of those slightly larger organizations, versus just the big organizations. So it's going back to the beginning. It's always learning in cybersecurity and owning a business.
It's on, so this is we all, maybe I'm repeating ourselves, at least me, it's a journey. It's not like a static thing. And
Yes.
Especially in a field like cybersecurity, where things change on daily basis, even sometimes. But I like this mindset, Lori, like, how you find your niche, right? So this is the main thing. And always I tell people, like, I'm sure you are excellent in maybe one small thing, work on it, and then go and try to, because, I've seen people who do this mistake. They try to do everything at the same time, although they are good, even excellent, but because they're trying to focus on multiple things, they not fail, but they suffer finding clients fast and closing deals faster. So looks like you find this balance of focusing on one thing and then expanding it to the rest. Now, maybe also like a question as an opinion here. Again, to the point that we don't see a lot of women in cybersecurity. Do you think that, although like in the recent years, and I had some guests even on the show, even founders for some like great names, but what we can do more to encourage more women to be like, I'm happy to see like more women in tech in general, but to have women in cybersecurity, at least I can tell you here in Dubai and in the Middle East where I am, I started to see recruiters in cybersecurity who are women, and they do perfectly good. They understand, the ins and outs. When they talk to vendors, they talk their language. But to have like more, I don't know, people like yourself who are consultants, advisors, or maybe who works hands-on experience. Like I didn't see much, for example, SOC managers. I didn't see much, MSSP, except maybe one or two, even they were my guests on the show. How we can encourage more women to be in this? And I'm asking you this, Lori, because I know women, they are, they will be more passionate about this because it needs details, and women are better than men in this. So how we can encourage more people and letting them forget about the stressful part?
Yes. I would say, honestly, I think we have to start young too. I think it's important. I have a couple nieces. I have a couple of the goddaughters. It's important to kind of show these younger girls that it is possible to be in the STEM, cybersecurity, and there are role models out there that can do it. And then kind of from that too, I would say there are organizations out there. There is one, at least in the US, called Women in Cybersecurity, where I actually mentor some of the younger women through that program, and help them kind of find their spot and role in cybersecurity. So that's definitely one of my passions, is trying to help other women in this space feel comfortable in this space, because again, I have been in it for so long, and I want other women in there too. It's not always easy. Like I said, walking into a room and you're like one of 3 women in a room of 100, people. So I definitely want to encourage other women to know that it is possible to go out there. It is possible to do it. And cybersecurity it's interesting. It's great to learn. The world is your oyster, basically, once you're in this industry. You can do technical, you can do compliance, you can, just do advisory services. There are so many different, I would say, areas in cybersecurity that women can find themselves depending on what they want to do as well.
Yeah, in general, as you mentioned, and this is regardless of the gender, this is the cybersecurity domain is so big that you can specialize in multiple things. And by the way, Lori, I think it's the first time I discuss with a guest the compliance part. Like we talked about many other aspects in cybersecurity, and the chance is to meet you today and discuss this, because again, I want to stress that this is important, especially if you are a startup. And to your point, Lori, if they're gonna go for these like bigger customers, they're gonna ask you about show us your FedRAMP if you're working with government, show us your SOC 2, show us like your ISOs. And this is where I think you, Lori, would come and help them, in getting in shape and prepared for that. Now, as we are almost close to the end, if you want to advise mainly founders, because I like to give the new generation advices, not only from me, from my guests, what areas, whether it's cybersecurity or not, you advise them to really not neglect at all cost?
I think it comes down to protecting the data of your customers. I think that would be it would ruin the business if you lost your data, your customers' data. So whether that be making sure proper access controls are in place, making sure that data is encrypted, making sure it's limited to only specific personnel, make sure that there is protection around that data where that data is not going to be compromised. I think that's really where you need to start. And any of the cybersecurity frameworks that you look at are going to talk about that anyways. So as long as you start putting controls in there to protect that data, I think that's where you really need to start, and then you can grow from there.
Great. Finally, Lori, where people can get in touch and if they want to learn more about your services?
Sure. They can go to my website, Cadra, CADRA.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. We do a lot of posts there. So I would say one of those 2 places, you can schedule a call with me, learn more about what we do, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody who reaches out.
Great. Again, thank you so much, Lori, for being here with me today. I really appreciate the time. I appreciate also the information you shared, the hints you shared, and also the lessons you shared with us today. For the audience, they don't have to look for the links or, rewind or do anything. So everything will be in the show notes. Lori's, LinkedIn profile and the company website will be available in the show notes if you're listening to on your favorite podcasting app. If you are watching this on YouTube, you will find that in the description. And again, Lori, thank you very, very, very much for the time. And this is how I usually, my pleasure. This is how usually I end my episodes. And this is for the audience. If you just discovered us by luck, thank you for passing by. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did so, please give me a favor, subscribe, share it with your friends and colleagues. And if you are one of the people who keeps coming again and again, thank you very much for the support. Thank you very much for the encouragements, for the messages. Believe me, I read every single message you send me. And I would love to thank everyone for supporting me during the book launch, which happened last month. I really appreciate your support. From Nowhere to Next is available on all, platforms, mainly on Amazon, if you want to order it. And thank you for also keeping the show since Feb or March this year till today. We are always in one country's top 200 chart on the Apple Podcast platform. So we never missed any week not being in the top 200 chart, and actually in the top 50, I can say, in one of the countries. It keep changing. I'm still waiting for my audience in the US to give us like a little bit, the push to get in the US. I know it's the most competitive, but thank you very much for all, the support. It can't happen without you, and this podcast exists because of you. So thank you very much. And as I say always, we'll meet again in a new episode very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.